You are now listening to the NerdWords podcast, brought to you by UtilityMuffinLabs.com. If you know your party's extension, please dial it now. Press 1 for customer service. Press 2 for podcasts. Press 3 to check on an order.
Welcome to NerdWords. I'm
Press
Nathan.
4 to eat it.
And I'm Bob.
And it's been a week, I think. We were a little bit behind with Gen Con, so I'm not really sure where we're at in the podcast scenarios, but who cares? This is for us, right? We do this because this is our podcast, right? This we do for Nate and Bob. We don't give a fuck about what y'all think. We do, but we don't. But
in this moment, we don't.
Right. In today, right now, this is where we don't get to edit ourselves.
Right here?
Right now.
This is, oh shit. That's not it.
So the reason why I wanted to just jump right into this podcast is because I know you've been busting hump because you've been rolling out the V5, and we don't really get to talk as much because we don't live together and we have very different schedules. So I want to know what's going on with V5. What's that like? How's that rolling out for you?
V5 is an awesome game, but I enjoy the fact that it's the same stuff. Right? You know the plot, you know the story, you know what you're playing, but the rules were updated to be smoother. And it throws all the mechanic crunch type people off their game.
I bet.
Now, it's like they don't know what to do now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they just have to. They're forced to describe what they're doing, and I'm hearing them, and it sounds like they're skipping on the internet. You know what I mean? So where before it was like, well, at this point I'll roll dice to figure out where I'm going because page 212 says I could do that, and I would like to do that now.
Right.
And now it's like, well, guys, you're in this scene and you got to go feeding, but using your predator type. How are you going to do that in a mall? And they're like, wait a second. Off the bat, I'm a bagger. How do I feed in a mall?
Right.
I don't know. The bagger type, for those who don't know, they prefer to drink from blood bags or a way to steal blood or get it and put it in containers and drink it. That's their method, like sneaking into a hospital and getting at the blood stash. But if you're in a mall, they're like, well, I guess I got to figure it out. Well, one player decided that he had to convince this just to give an example, that he was convinced one of the street players that he saw that had a heroin habit. And he's like, I'll pay that guy $150 for his blood. That's what I'll do. I'll talk to him on the side and whatever. And it made it a more lengthy scene. But I listened to where he wasn't asking for rules. He was trying to literally just, hey, man, 350 is not enough. 300 will do it. And this guy's like, yeah, 300 will do it, considering how many hours I'd have to be out here to do that. And all you want me is to squirt some stuff into a bag.
Right.
Deal. And then he reveals, he goes, actually, I work for the mob, and I have a kit that I could use as a street doc. We'll just get a bag of blood, and here's your 500, no questions. And the guy was like, wait a minute, I'm an addict.
Right.
I live in the street. You're a medical pro, and you got all the tools I can see you're pulling out. And right here on this bench in the CD Park, do it. Get your money. Just get it done. And he's like, really? I was like, welcome to V5. If you can do something logically that fits in line with your concept, and this should have always been the way it was,
right?
But it's like the mechanical crunch-minded players couldn't get that until they took it away,
right?
And now that they took that crutch away, and all they are focused on is sort of that. I like to call it Norwegian style. I really feel it comes from that,
right?
More story, less roll.
Well, and my experience in it's not even so much that they took the rules away, or it didn't seem to me. Playing through it and sort of reading and understanding and digesting, or as we'd call in the business, ingesting the information. It didn't seem to me that they took anything away. It seemed to me almost that they sort of added but refined, right? It's like they turned sugar into caramel, right? That's to me kind of like what they did, where it was like these things were they were assumed all along. Right? For storytellers of the classic storytelling concept, which I consider the two of us to be, these things were always implied, and we sort of understood kind of like the conceptualization of character creation. That was the focus. It was like you make a character, but you're making a 3-dimensional character, and then the rules are kind of like, whatever. We got to have combat rules because nobody will play the game unless there's a combat rule. But the rest is kind of up to you as a storyteller. They're sort of generally defined. To me now, it seems like they're more defined, but more defined towards story concept.
What I would say, and I agree with combining both, I'd say it unburdens the player. That's my experience. It unburdens them from having to know everything. However, as the storyteller in it, pro I may be, the pro shows because when I'm reading a book, I didn't memorize how the new rules go. It was eye-opening, right? Now I knew the die roll system. I knew what would happen with hunger, which is an important mechanic to have down.
Yeah.
You know, I knew all the crunch necessary to keep a scene going. But when someone's like, "Hey, the disciplines change. I'm activating this. What's that do?" And I was like, "You need to get comfortable with knowing your stuff."
Right.
And they're like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "That's the part you guys got to do." Because like I got this stuff in the back end as an ST. I don't have to flip to tell you what your power does.
Right.
But you can tell me what it does and narrate how it is to your character. That was the freedom it gave me, you know. Take a little role in how that means to you and rolling out. They liked it, you know. People get creative with it and showing it. And I was like, good. I've never seen this. Right?
Well,
I've never seen that. Honestly, I'm impressed.
Well,
you force the player to come out of their shell.
I think too, with a game like this, like essentially, for all intents and purposes, those people that play tabletop have essentially been playing the same game since '92, right? Like let's not mince words. Their updates or revisions have been so insignificant and so small that you didn't really have to. This was the conversation that would come up. Oh, celerity doesn't work like that anymore. You got to adjust a little bit. It's on page such and such. Go ahead and check that out. That was the conversation, right? Right. To me, that was what V20 did. It went. We don't use we don't use secondary abilities anymore. Now it's just it's all wrapped up into the normal abilities. That's not like a groundbreaking dynamic change to the game, right? And what they've done now is they've taken that game and in a lot of ways they've used it as the outline, but then changed everything around it to kind of make more sense. So it is almost like a completely new game.
For sure.
But in a familiar, like the clans are still there, the world is still there. That's like some of the debates I've seen online, which are in many accounts are uninformed opinions. They're from people who haven't read the book. They're like, "Oh, you just tried to turn this game into Requiem," and they didn't, because it's not that. Did they take elements that made sense in Requiem and try to introduce them to this game?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that if you follow the logic, then you would understand, like, Requiem, the Chronicles of Darkness or New World of Darkness at the time when it came out, it was kind of meant to be like, these are all these good ideas that we have. Let's, instead of trying to introduce them into this game, let's just make a new game. People love it. And you know, to a varying degree of effect. I mean, I actually find it quite interesting and quite entertaining, and I'm actually quite happy about the fact that there seems to be a lot of people who actually are into Chronicles of Darkness, and that makes me want to go and understand those lines better, because I have a very modest understanding of them.
And what's good about it, you know, it's just somebody who very much understands them, have a lot of the library for it. The funnest aspect about it is that you get to read about, it's like reading about new vampire clans,
right? You
know, for a lot of what they did, and that's the fun part. I always enjoyed it, but their fresh pop take, not pop as in you know, oh, it's new, right? When you read it, if you're used to the old world, coming to it, or V20, I guess is the better term, old world, but you come to it, you start reading about the Gangrel clan, for instance, and you realize that, you know, the Bruja are just a bloodline offshoot of the Gangrel. You're like, wait a second, that sounds like crap, except you realize you don't know what the hell these Gangrel are until you read that book. And, you know, they kind of it grabs you, right? When you're like, the Gangrel are like a font of violence. That's what they're trying to hold back constantly, because they're raw primal instinct, given and go feed on blood. But wait a minute, try to be human. It makes sense that a derivative of them would be some hardcore kind of classic bikers,
right?
Driving around from, you know, place to place, eating people, and you're like, oh, okay, you're just different,
right?
And that's okay. And they built up the whole library for it. Not to over glom on it. It's no secret that Bob's a fan of Requiem and where it goes with. But I've also learned to fall back in love with the V20 and V5, right. And V5 definitely is on even keel with me with my love for Requiem.
Right.
And to bring that back full circle, that's the thing about V5 is I watch these people who were diehard You change what I like, screw you, it's bad.
Yeah.
Suddenly they're playing V5 and they're like, I got to play V5.
Right.
I got to play more V5. Because they realize we didn't change what you love, buddy. We just
Right.
made it better.
Well, and I got to tell you something too. Like for me, I've always kind of gone through phases, right? I'll play some Vampire for a while and I'll get super into it, and then I'll kind of take a step back and relax on it for a while, because when you do anything, even something that you love immensely for a long period of time, you have a well that dries up, right? Is there someone skiing near you?
They think they're doing construction. That's outside, and it's not. I don't know what they're doing, but it involves metal and banging things.
I gotcha. I was like, what the fuck is that noise? So anyways, yeah, that's neither here nor there. I'm sure most people probably don't even hear it, but it's just like you kind of get to the point where you're like, I'm a little dried up on this. And to me, especially going through, since we've been doing this podcast, like going through and like seeing people's conversations or seeing people's questions, you get to the point where you're kind of like, how is this stuff that, like, how are these questions still being asked? How are there still mysteries to this? And to me, having this unique opportunity to hear about V5 being conceived and then seeing it being launched, and then also seeing all of the things that are different, it really, I think for me, it refreshes me, right? It reinvigorates me. And I think for a lot of people, it's the same thing. It's a hobby that we enjoy, but it allows us to go, oh shit, like there are new things. I'm not upset about that. I couldn't possibly be upset about that because I like new things. I like it when things change and grow. This isn't, the things that people have bitched about with V5, they're not Kingdom of the Crystal Skull scenarios. They're not, there's nothing world breaking about this.
Right. And sort of off topic and maybe a terrible segue. I think a lot of people also, I'll tell you my perspective. I thought that if I'm a person who knows a lot of the info of the game we're playing and a lot of the world, I get excited about changes, even little ones, and trying to see how that alters how the enjoyment and digestion of the material already put out could use. Because I'm always the guy that says, I bought the whole damn library. I'm not throwing it out because you came up with a new edition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that's not your intention.
Right.
You came up with a new edition and says, use what works out of the new and the old, but get rid of the stuff that doesn't.
Right.
Okay, great. So that's my job. But as a hobby saying, but when you go to talk to other people about it, you get the arms crossed. Like I always see this, the adults do the little kids thing where they cross their arms. I don't want it.
Right.
No, it's new. And they want you to suddenly sell the product you're excited about.
Right.
And I sat there and went, wow, the only reason that can exist is because people rely on word of mouth.
Right.
They rely on it. It's never going to get out of style. I don't care what technology comes out. They're waiting for some sucker to have stepped forward and bought it first to say it was a waste of money or was worth your time.
Right.
And that's it. Well, we also find ourselves in a point, and this is to also to my point. I used to think it was rude, right?
Right.
If you're talking to someone for a length of time and all they do is listen.
Right.
Right. Because when that person starts listening and that's it, I give like a good 2-3 minutes usually it takes me to realize you clearly don't give a shit what I'm talking about.
Sometimes that's the case, yeah.
Because you're silent, right? Exactly. That's what I'm taught. It's what you're taught in etiquette. It's what you're taught in listening to people in the normal world. That's that. However, in this hobby, that's how people learn.
Right.
That's how they're learning. They don't want to have to read. If a person who's well-read is actually telling you about the stuff, then why are they going to go read it?
Right.
And they don't get the folly of that, but that's all right. But that's how they get their info.
Right.
And I've realized that because being online, you're sitting in a room of people who it'll be dead silent. I was in a room with 20 people before, and this week, where it was just silence. And then someone would ask a question, be like, hey, Bob, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. Well, I typically do. I'll mention the dry answer, and then I'll attach it to a story of where it was used.
Right.
If I have one. And then that's it. That's your answer. And I sat there and someone was like going, I noticed that you pause a lot. And I was like, I pause because this is a discussion. Right?
Nah, bitch, it's a dissertation.
Right. I'm letting you get involved.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. And so it baffles me because I'm a learner. I'm a forever learner. I prefer to be that way.
Right.
But it's like there's less people who are coming to us to to discuss. It's more like, tell us how it is.
Right. Well, I think too that a part of the issue that you might be experiencing is an issue that I've experienced too, in that when you do a podcast or you do like any kind of long form conversational scenario, mostly podcast, you get to the point where you think about what you're going to say what you're going to say, and then you pause because it is a conversation, right? It's
Right.
a weird, it's a structured conversation. Bob has a point. Nate has a point. Whoever, else is on the podcast has a point, and it goes on. When you have long periods of silence, you're like, oh, this is not going to be entertaining, or I'm going to have to edit this or whatever. And not everybody does that, but that's just kind of like the way that we've done it. Now, we've done that for 3 years, right? We do this, 3, 4, 5 times a week, sometimes every week for 3 years. You start to learn a little bit about conversation. And like Bob's not listening to me talk right now because he's like digesting what I'm saying. He is, but also he's going to get a point to go, yeah, I agree. Let me expand on that point, or let me do a spike over the net because I disagree with you. It's like point counterpoint, But when you're in a room with people on Discord, or you're in a room with people, you're online, you're not face to face. People, I don't know, I guess people just don't they don't have any way to actively participate in that. And it's weird. Like it's kind of weird.
It makes me think, and it's not that I believe that we are Socrates or Plato, but you imagine those amphitheaters where they went there and students would just come and then ask a profound question, and that becomes the lesson of the day, right? Because that's all they do is extrapolate on it. That's what the readings teach us. And I always said, no one ever does that. Who does that? Like I like you lecture in class and whatever, but nobody likes the teacher that lectures forever.
No,
it never happens. Even the teacher hates lecturing forever. It's like, I'm only doing this because you guys aren't asking me questions. If you ask me questions, I can define it. But if you're not going to say anything, we got a bucket of time for me to get a plan across, and I'm going to deliver it. So I hope you're getting it.
Right.
And it's weird to have that happen, but it happens. But when you're done, when that happens to you about game, and a game you didn't make, right? You're just a fan of. It's like, oh, okay. We get all our knowledge from these books, and these books have all the knowledge. And then you read it, and I read it, and then I may have missed something.
That's true. The thing is, though, Bob, what you're missing out on here is that all of those people who you're talking about have come about, like they've come to respect your level of knowledge, right? And so you're kind of viewed in the same way that I am, whether you wanted to or not, as a sort of a micro authority on the material, right? Like I've noticed lately, and this is just kind of like a really small sort of random thing, but people tag us on Twitter at the same time they're tagging White Wolf and Onyx Path. And I'm like, do they not know we're not them? Like and I've kind of mentioned this before. Like to me, there's a very fine line between what we do and kind of being shills, like we're not insiders. Like we don't work for them, but we're kind of fanboy enough that we decided to make this podcast. And I think most of our reviews that we do are generally favorable, and that can kind of make us seem like we're insiders. Like we don't work for them. We don't get paid by them. We kind of like loosely interacted with White Wolf and Onyx Path people. And I don't know about you, but I was still kind of like, oh, wow, like those are people that make things that I like.
Yeah, that's the point. Like they're artists, they're creative. We're artists, we're creative,
right?
And it's like, but we really like what they're doing, and we've done it for decades, right? So it's like, cool. We want you to do better. And they've had some points where man was it dark for them, but we were still their fans throughout the whole thing, right? So it's like we want to see them do well, and especially if with this stuff coming out, we support it if it's good, right? Notice that we support it if it's good. Right. Because being a fan means you're the most strict critic,
right,
about what it comes down to, right? So when we meet them though, and they hold themselves, like we could tell you professionally, they hold themselves like no other,
right?
The White Wolf. There've been some employees in the past who let it go to their head, and you meet them, and like I wouldn't touch a booth for years at Gen Con because they would have like the worst representatives there.
Well, yeah,
that are brand and brass. But I'm just saying that's what it was in the past, right? Because how do you not? When it was super big, right? When everybody, it was a brand name and whatever, massive stuff was being invested, marketing money thrown around, their own fans would carry that ego to ever heights.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, no, that's the absolute truth. I mean, that's something that the quote unquote scene was kind of known for, that there was like this kind of exclusive douchebaggy kind of mentality. And there was, like, I will be the first to admit, like, there was, and some of those people were a major turnoff, and some of them didn't deserve it at all. Like, they weren't, you get, whenever you have like something that attracts other people, you get that like cult of personality thing where someone's like, I'm the shit. And then they, confidence is not a bad thing, but when you start to have like people glom onto your ideas, and you start to realize that you have like a weird power over other people, if you're not a secure person already, you can really fall prey to some of those concepts. And that's stuff that I saw not only in the vampire scene, but like in my peripheral access to like the goth scene. There were some douchey people, some seriously douchey people that you were just like, I don't understand how anybody wants to be around you. You're a fucking nerd. Like, let's face it, right? We're all gamers, we're all fucking nerds. But sometimes some of us forget that we're fucking nerds and start acting like we're the cool kid on the street. And it's like, you're not.
Well, if my peers are into the same thing, are you still a nerd when we're talking?
Right.
And that's the thing. And that's what gets to your head. And when you can't logically discern that in your own microcosm, you're the shit. Okay, it's great that you're confident when you're the only thing you talk about is what you've mastered. Sure. Right. Fair. We'll give it to you. However, there's a whole world out there.
Yeah.
And not everybody sees that way. And my point is that, to finish it off, because White Wolf has grown, right? They've grown as a company. I enjoy watching it from when we heard of them and got involved to watching the bad point and into the good point. It's like you're watching a company that's a real person.
Right.
Like anybody, if you start getting slammed up to higher heights, your ego's going to grow. You don't have a choice.
Right.
But I got to let you know, right? And this is something that I had a realization of, just from talking to people about, experiences at the booth, whatever, and other people as they talk to them. You learn 9 times out of 10, when we went to the big booths used to have at Gen Con, the employees were the ones behind the counter making the sale.
Right.
They really had only 3, maybe 4 people there, but there would be fans, like 20, 30, that would hang out there all day. Those are the people who you would think, right? Like I did. Oh, that's what? No, it wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't. They literally went up there and they would hang out and they would just, hey, what book are you looking for? Yeah, that's over here. Let me get that. Now, if you're the guys behind the counter trying to ring them up, you're like, hey, thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, right there, but gotta buy it. They're trying to tender what they got going on, and they're getting beat up. But once I realized that, I sat there and went, huh.
Right.
So, and why, when we were the fans, admittedly, you already said this, I will full on admit that I was a person who would listen to other people and be involved in these think tanks of folks who said they were masters of the game.
Right.
And you hear it going on in the self-promotion. And that's really what it is. And it's human nature, right? When you're good at something, you're good at something.
Right.
And you want everybody to know.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think that also it's important to note that it's a completely different company, right? It is from the ground up. It is a completely different company with different people and a different process of promoting their material. I was talking to Rachel about this and some other folks that we were talking to at Gen Con. And what I noticed this year, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't like the concept of booth babes. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Like that's not even a thing anymore. But White Wolf in its like post vampire heyday, was like real big on that. And I think that in and of itself kind of promotes sort of a douchey mentality, right? And it's very interesting to me that that's like as a concept just doesn't seem to exist, at least not at Gen Con anymore.
Right. And that's the thing, though, is learning the new employees. And I can't crow on them enough because I feel that it's finally not only responsible, they're approachable. And because they're approachable, I'm more apt to pay attention to anything they say. And I'm going to say this, not only a fan of White Wolf, I'm somebody that respects them currently. Right. I want to state that because the new regime is the one I want to give the props to.
Right.
They're the one that brought life back to it. They're the one who creatively are driven. to see it do well, and they have a mentality of not only all inclusion, but also still holding the maturity and the mechanic to say, hey, this is a dark game.
Right.
This is what it's about. So don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
And, but if you like it, we have great writers of the story. Please explore it. We welcome you to try. And they're about the story.
Right.
Right. I really feel that's a huge thing they've done. And that's how it's going to keep going. So when people say, oh yeah, you guys are like, you're with White Wolf, you do whatever. It's like going, we're with them like you are.
Right. We're fans.
We're fans. But we support them. Right. That's the important thing.
Well, that was the one thing, we were kind of like chatting about where, somebody had kind of posted a comment on the YouTube video and was like, why did you get the book beforehand? It's like, dude, we've been doing these podcasts for 2 years now. Like, if anything, but it's like I spent, what did we spend? $255 on White Wolf books at Gen Con. Like,
right.
And I don't make a shitload of money. Like, I make a very modest paycheck, but I spend my money on things that bring me joy. If there's a company, if there's a game that I like, and hell, we bought fucking Star Trek Adventures, right? We bought some other stuff. We were talking to DJ and he got that DeGenesis game. Like, that looked cool. Had nothing to do with White Wolf. I never even heard of it beforehand, but like, that's a book that's in my list of things to get because it looks badass. It looks fun. And I think that, if they made something that was completely off the mark and tried to like push this generic concept, if they hadn't rebuilt it from the ground up and tried to sell me another green book with, some more discipline dots and you can have these wacky bloodlines, and they didn't change anything, I probably still would have bought it, let's be honest, but I probably would have been less pleased. Like when Onyx Path put out that V20, to me, that was cool, right? It was like, oh, they didn't forget about us. Like, they still have their, old school fans in mind. Cool. But as a player, I didn't know that would like kind of get the ball rolling on something years down the road where like it was an actual, reimagining, re-release, the presses are running again. Like, I never thought that. So the fact that they took the time and developed a book and tried to take chances and really look at it from a different perspective than just like another green covered book, that makes me happy as a consumer and as a player. So it's like, whatever, if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you don't want to add the material, don't add it to your game. If you don't want to buy it, play V20, play revised, do whatever. I never included Gehenna plot in any of my games because I thought it was stupid. I didn't enjoy it.
Can I tell you of my 3-month war online about our own game?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have 4 people who participate in a tabletop, and I'm not going to, it's not what we do. It's not about slamming them. Right. But they actively watch what we're writing, like what we put up there.
Right.
And every time their favorite clans to watch are the Tremere, the Giovanni, and the Ventrue. Right. Mm-hmm. And the Ventrue is a recent occurrence, right? Because we didn't have a huge populace of people. In fact, we had like a quiet, sleepy one or twoer that did it. But now that they're more active in politics and are looking at a Camarilla city, it's that, how we do. We had all the elements. There's nothing missed.
Right.
Well, as plot picked up, I started getting these, does Nate know you're doing this? And I was like, what the fuck does it matter? Nate, I storytell the online. That's what are you talking about? Nate's involved. He pokes in, he says hi.
Right.
He looks at his plots, watches them develop that he left. They're there. What are you referring to? And one of the recent comments I got, well, I just feel that what you do is hard mode and that Nate would let somebody do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't understand. And he goes, well, case in point, I feel that when Ventrue X and Giovanni Y meet up, that it shouldn't always be hateful, and yours is hateful. And I was like, you mean the NPCs? He's like, yeah. So I took a copy and sent them the relationship chart of those NPCs.
Right.
I was like, I have relationship charts for NPCs. Those are fictitious characters I made up.
Right.
They're not even, they just flushed them out. And here you go. And when they saw that, they like going, why would you do that for all your NPCs? It's like, because I'm Bob.
Right.
It's like, what does that mean? I have no idea how for one character is going to feel about another character point to point, so I take notes.
Right.
And I leave it up there. This guy thinks Ventrue is a douche. Boom. Okay, remember that bad encounter last time. But this is 3 months, right? And I'm sitting here going, I need that to stop.
Do they know? Are they aware that I'm not active in any of the plot in that game?
No. Because and I'm happy that perception's even there,
right?
Because in truth, you are.
No,
right?
You're absolutely right. You're 100%.
Because the thing is that we're in the world you help set up,
right?
That you laid the seeds for, right? And it's still very infantile in terms of what they found and what they discovered and what they moved. It's a story it's a big story,
right?
It takes time. And as I'm sitting there, they're like, "Oh, well, all right, cool," And then I'm realizing that what it is that when we do our meetups,
right,
and you jump in and we're there, and a couple people start asking questions and they get involved, they're there to hear both of us,
right,
is what it comes down to. And they're like, well, online they're only seeing this, and I had to explain to him. I was like, okay, I want you to think about this real carefully. He's like, what? The game's a thank you. That's what it is. He goes, well, you have all those employees playing all those characters. I was like, those are patrons. Those aren't employees. Those are patrons. And they're like, really? I was like, you really think that we had? What are you? And that's when I started laughing. Like, one guy was like, I heard some convoluted story. I don't even know if this is true. That White Wolf used to do an online game. They would hire a company to do an online game, and they would pay the first 20 people to generate excitement on that online game, to then launch and pre-test and play-test product through them as a marketing thing. And I was like, no.
So yeah, so what I've been able to find out, and this is just a sort of vague concept, and some of that may be true, I don't know, but basically what I've been able to suss out is that certain people, they like to claim affiliation with White Wolf and say things like that, like this game went and it influenced this book and da 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 da. But I don't really have any proof that that's true. I've never been able to talk to someone who actually wrote a book and hear them say, yes, this particular game or this group of gamers influenced the writing of this book, save for like Mind's Eye Society, right? Mind's Eye Society, like their official game, from what I understand, influences the plot of their books, right? But it's not canon. Right. And that's what's important to note. Books are written by writers. And I think most of those writers come up with their own ideas, as writers want to do.
And should.
Right. And now if I were like a freelance writer and I had like this world that I'd come up with, I might then employ, and I use air quotes when I say employ, I might employ my players to see kind of like where that goes. But it's actually really difficult to take what your players do and then translate that into a story that's interesting to anyone other than your players. It's very hard because your players do whatever the hell they want, and it may not make sense. It may be illogical. It may be counterproductive to the flow of a story, right? And that's like what I think is really important, that a story written as fiction may not have the same like pacing and tempo as a story you're sitting down at the table with your players to run. Regardless of that, I don't know of any actual, I heard that shit all the time too. Like that was in like the late 90s and early 2000s. Everybody knew somebody who was in a game that did this, that created this book, and never could I find any facts to back that story up. It's like the great urban legend that, somebody was online and they got paid. No. We don't do that because no, like there's 3 people that play non-player characters. Everybody else has the same consequences as everybody else.
It has to be that way, right?
Right.
That's how it is. It's called a game. But no, it's interesting because there's all sorts, right, that you meet up and down the road. And I took the online initiative and make it a point to be accessible in voice a lot.
Right.
And it's because some people want to jump in and talk to you about more than that, right? And then the sharing happens. Right. Do you know that critical moment?
I do.
Where they're your friends and it crosses over, and I find I have to be referee.
Yeah.
Like the flow of chat's like, oh yeah, guys, da 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 da, and it goes, well, my dog, and okay, pets are cool. Well, my crackhead mother who sits still on the couch after, whoa, hey man, let's talk offline.
Yep.
You can call me, we can have that chat, but you're in front of 30 people. Don't put yourself on blast.
Yeah. That's hard. That's stuff that happens. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, people get used to, playing these games and having these intimate scenarios, and they want to share stuff. And you're like, well, yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad. But I do want to address one thing. And I think that this is something that I want to articulate more. People say Bob's storytelling style and Nate's storytelling style are different. Bob's hard mode and Nate's easy mode. I 100% agree with that. And here's why I agree with that. I feel like Bob storytells in such a way that it doesn't matter. Like, your character is part of the world, right? And the world goes on. It doesn't matter, necessarily what you do or don't do. There's, equal and opposite action, reaction, that whole thing. Like, yeah, Bob is very unforgiving as a player who's played in Bob's games for many, many years. Yes. But that's what we addressed that at the beginning, right? If you go all the way back a year and some months ago, we said, this is exactly what this game is going to be. As a storyteller, as a Nate storyteller, there are a few people who get kind of like an unforgiving response from me as a storyteller. Jeff is one of them, a prime example. Jeff has gone through many characters in my games. But yeah, so I do have a different approach. However, in Curse of Cain, it was no different than Bob's. It was essentially the exact same. Like, yes, and I think I speak for you too. Like, I'm very interested in what your character is doing. I'm very interested in who you speak with, but also Curse of Cain was about like playing World of Darkness without the boundaries of the safety net, right? Taking that net away. It's hard, right? It's very hard to play in a game like that. And when I run the gold game, I don't really run it that way. I run it in a very, for me, it's kind of like training wheels. Is it going to stay that way? No. But for me as a storyteller, it's about, all right, where do you want to go with it? What do you want to happen? So yeah, I think we do have different storytelling techniques. However, I think that that's just not one. Like, Bob doesn't just know hard mode. Nate doesn't just know easy mode. Nate doesn't, those are all different types of storytelling.
I'm a Faustian storyteller. That's my own self-proclaimed thing. I'm very Faustian. I believe there should be no boundary for you. You should be able to do whatever you want. You're the Lords of the Night. Right. That's what it is. However, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to do, number one. Number two, I'm also one to let you do whatever you want.
Right.
Right? But you're going to get the consequences for what that is, even when you succeed.
Right.
Case in point, we had a player who became a billionaire overnight using Tremere Technomancy. He did it all, but he wasn't prepared for the legality of that company owning him.
Right.
Once he did it, you took a company from failure and made them like NASDAQ competing almost overnight.
Right.
And they were straight up with it, all the glory, and he was everywhere, right? Wired magazine, everything. That sucks for the Masquerade, doesn't it? And, he had to make a concession with the entire city and a Permission Council, and basically they owned him.
Right.
If he ever made a mistake, that was it, but he was too useful to get rid of. Now, I won't go farther into that, but just to say, for that player, it was awesome. He succeeded way beyond what he thought. It was amazing. The power worked like he thought. And then he went, shit.
Right.
like it works just as it, oh my God, right. If I could go back in time. And I was like, think about any vampire anywhere, right? That's why the elders make it look easy. Elders don't use powers all the time. Why? They could do some real damaging things.
Right.
Use it when needed, and less is more. And that's the whole thing. And why is that hard mode? Because if you're just starting out, you want to run down the street and destroy stuff. And me, I'm that guy when you're an anarch, when it's a group of neonates, when you're playing those roles that don't have responsibility, really, other than to get spanked by the people who do have the responsibility, right? And that's that. And that's not to defend it. I agree with you 100% on what you said. It's just in Faustian storytelling, I find that people get a full human experience. And I like that you put on training wheels because I do see the turn.
Yeah.
When it's those people who get it, and once they get it, I watch them develop into a player who now expects it. And the moment they expect it, you remove the wheel.
Right. Well, I mean, it requires a great deal more effort on the part of the player. right? That style of storytelling and that style of gaming is not fostered by sort of casual in and out gaming. And that's for me, with the gold game that I run, I do it once a month, right? So you have the time to think in between sessions, and it's really casual, and you just have to get together on a Sunday night from 8 to midnight, and it's just like for fun. There's going to be problems. There's going to be trouble. There's no way you can't have that when players get involved, when players start creating stories. So, that's where we're at right now in that game, where there's trouble on the horizon. There's trouble immediately, right? And to me, that's not easy.
No.
But however, I did hold off.
Right.
Right. I held out, but I don't, the game that we started in Curse of Cain, we told them off the bat, like, you set your own level of knowledge, your level of involvement, right? If you want to be dedicated to this game and make all the hard decisions and be on every night, that's on you. Right. If you don't. If you don't participate actively, it's a lot harder to get into shit, right? It's a lot harder to get into trouble if you're just like, hey, I'm the wallflower at Elysium. I don't really talk to anybody. I just like to sit and watch. All right, cool. And but also that indicates, don't then as a player go, hey, how come nothing's happening with me? You're not doing anything. And it's okay that you're not doing anything. Every Elysium needs somebody who nobody gives a shit about. But right, but
you're very true,
right? You can't have the nobodies without having somebody, right? You need somebodies to have nobodies, and you need nobodies to have somebodies. You need individuals who are like, he's poorly dressed, but he doesn't say anything. He doesn't speak up. He's nobody. He's not important. I don't give a shit. He's inconsequential until he goes out and breaks the masquerade and murders 3 people on Hollywood Boulevard, right? Like that. But that's the thing. Like, if your only level of involvement is, I get angry, I break the masquerade, I murder a bunch of people, you can't get upset when the sheriff and his deputies come and stake you and drag you before the prince. You just can't. That's not easy mode. That's not hard mode. That's maintaining the consistency of the game we've all agreed to play.
Right. And you have a chance to escape too. Keep that in mind. Do what you can. And for me, and I know, and I suspect the same for you, I adore having moral decisions made as much as possible.
Right.
When someone decides that I accidentally killed somebody. One of my favorite things is when a player waits until they're so low, they frenzy and kill the vessel they're feeding on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like how they cleverly use terms like that too. It's a vessel. Right? It's not blood. It's vitae.
Right.
It's okay. And I watch them make excuses, right? And then I see the excuses come out. I'm not a contrarian. I'm not sitting there wanting to debate them, but I'm like going, I always do this. It's like so you feel that man that you fed on, who had a family, who went outside on the porch to have a cigarette away from them because he was embarrassed that he still smokes, and he wants to stop to set a good example, and he wants to live longer. That's the goal. He wants to be around to enjoy that family grow. You, the Nosferatu, hid under the steps, grabbed him, drug him down, covered his mouth, and you quelled his beast so he would agree to go with you. And you fed on him. That's okay. You didn't kill him. It's not your way. And you back away. And you watched him just listlessly stand up, and you told him to go inside because his will's crushed. Mm-hmm. That's what it does. And you tell him to go inside and just be a father. And he goes inside, and he just sits down. And now his emotions are so cowed that he's just like, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'll be all right. Mm-hmm. Sure, dishes are mine. I work tomorrow. I'll do that. And he's watching. He thinks nothing of it. And then later on, he reads in the paper how this guy just almost overnight one day just snaps to, and he's just pissed off, and he has a story to tell that something attacked him. He was outside, blah, blah, blah. And then that player goes, I'm going to find him and kill him. And I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Right.
You went and used that on him, and I need you to realize that you're at a humanity of 7.
Right.
Right? You went and feeding on him, that's okay. You didn't kill him, but you got to eat. And you let him go back, that's fine. But you did nothing to address what would happen when that wore off, when his will came back unto its own. And so now your resources of his outlandish story, where he seems like one of the many people who you would see on a ghost hunter show,
right,
talking about what happened to him. That's all it is right now. But you think now it's your duty to skulk into his home and kill him? It's like, yeah, welcome to humanity of 6. And they're like, what? you can't do that. Oh, I absolutely can do that. But you got to, and then that's where it comes from. You're like, well, why do you do that? Well, I like to think that human nature, you and multitudes of people, every single person's unique in how they're going to handle a scenario. And that's why I love being at the helm as a storyteller. I get to see all that interaction on what they would do. And you watch this, because they think they're humans with super beings. Every storyteller knows that playing vampire.
Right.
But when you pull back the layer and they start seeing that humanity dwindle, now you're looking at almost a completely different perspective of what's inside them that's growing. And I love that it does that.
Right. Well, and see, I think that the major difference between our two styles of storytelling is you let them have the thought. You go, okay, this is your logic. And then you go, welcome to the punishment. And the only difference is Nate tends to go, are you sure you want to do that? I think that's the real difference is that Bob's got the difficulty switch just one up.
Nate's Jiminy Cricket.
Right.
And let your conscience be your guide, and I'm the devil on your shoulder.
Nate's more apt to warn you of the potential punishment for your activity and let you rethink it, and Bob's just going to let you do it and go, this is what the punishment is. And nothing wrong with either of those types of stories or storytelling. And in fact, I think that a lot can be said for that. Like, hey man, like we told you from the start, this wasn't going to be, the easy mode gameplay, and nothing wrong with that. So anyways, it's cool to hear about the V5. Cool to get that storytelling, to hear the stories of the things that I've missed.
Dude, it's the one game I wish you could have listened in on is when we had most of our home crowd that supports us online. Mm-hmm. And they're in that gold game. Mm-hmm. And I keep calling it gold game because they're individuals, but the V5 game. And they, as they're playing the stop start, was a joy from people who were just mastering things, right? But then it was the wow factor, right? It's like, oh man, I'm at a hunger of -1. I don't have to feed, but I'm still at -1. Now I won't get to 0 unless I kill someone. I hear him say the mechanic. I said, well, let's be honest today. When you woke up today, weren't you hungry? You wanted breakfast, right?
Right.
It's like, yeah, you weren't starving. You could skip breakfast, but you knew you'd be hungry by the time lunch came around. It's like, yeah, so do you have some cereal or not?
Right.
And when I said it, they're like, yeah, I'm going to have some cereal. Right? Okay.
Right.
So we had people, I loved it. The differences between a guy and a girl, I'll just say this quick one. They have the same hunting style. They're alley cats, right? Which means they prefer to be predators who hunt, right? So they decide it's a mall. We're going to go to the bathrooms and hang out. Well, the guy goes into the female's bathroom and just talks his way past one girl and says, the other one's full, blah, 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 whatever. And she goes, okay, fine. I'll keep a lookout. Go real quick. Okay. She's thinking he's going number 1, right? Well, he walks in there and deliberately pulls down his pants and sits in the john. And she's like, I am not waiting here for that. Like once that happens, she's like, okay. And she just walks out. No big deal. And you get the scenario. Someone's going to come in, think one thing, he's hiding, opens the stall. It's mange time, right?
Right.
But I keep describing how, he try not to get grossed out. He's like, what do you mean? We know what happens in the bathroom, right? Here you're sitting in here looking to eat, and all you could smell is human waste. And it permeates in your vampire senses. It really permeates, And they go into the humors of the body, right? Well, one of the things the book doesn't talk about that I just went with, because why is waste different than any other thing you would exude from your body, right? You get an idea of what might be there, and you have those heightened senses. And it was described to someone how something so revolting and disgusting to your mind, except that they're your type. You can smell it from the waist on them. Right. And they're like, oh, well, I'll do that, right? That's the guy that's getting in detail. He had a much difficult time. He had to literally just knock someone out to feed on him.
Right.
However, the girl goes to the guy's side of the bathroom. And I just had to put this out there. She's standing at the guy's side of the bathroom right by the door. And this guy just being whatever. It looks like he's a mall employee. Walks by, and I envision him as being somebody who works at GameStop. Right? That's what I had. And I described the uniform, but that didn't connect with anybody else. But GameStop always has those guys who are like, yeah, I work at GameStop. I know the latest and greatest. I know everything, blah, blah, blah. And it has this false bravado, a certain type, right? So when he walks in, sees her, he says a comment, of course. He's like, oh, you curious about what goes on in here? And she's like, yes, sweetheart. All right. Give me a minute. I'll be in the third stall. Well, basically, I'll call your fucking bluff. You're not coming in.
Right.
He goes into the third stall. And she's like, all right. Opens the door. She walks in. Well, she's there to feed. He thinks he's getting laid.
Right.
Right? But he's not expecting her to walk in. When she walks in, he's like, no, I'm good. And she's like, what? What do you mean you're good? You said knock at the third stall. He goes, no, I'm cool. I'm like, I'm kind of shitting. So, I'm all right. She's like, what? And he's like, well, yeah, it's the reverse. It's you called his bluff. He's too nervous.
Right.
He said, I can't live up to that. Like, I've never had, you're some strange hot chick outside of the bathroom. And now she has to convince him it's okay, trying to get it done. And she ends up just hiding outside because she gets mad, right? She's brouhaha. She makes her self-controlled. She's like, I so was going to seduce this guy, but this is why I'm a fucking predator. Waits outside the stall, silent as death.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's like, oh, thank God. Finishes his business. He's like on the phone, Mom, married. I couldn't have done that, saying sweet nothings to his wife. Walks out mumbling himself how crazy it was. She just chokes him out and feeds on him. Right? And just calls it a day. And I was like, I'm sitting here laughing because she goes, I didn't even have to feed. That's the worst part about this. I just wanted a nip. That's it. And I was like, that right there is why I love V5. That right there says the mechanic works. You had in your head, I was just going to do a quick nip. I'm an addict. I just wanted a quick hit from a day. Right. That's all I needed. Wet the whistle. And I was like, well, welcome to being a vampire. That's what that is every damn night.
Right.
Which made it cool.
And I think that a really awesome side effect of that is it gets the players into the mindset of hunting more than just like to fill up the bar. Right. That's always been my biggest problem with vampire. It's like, well, I mean, my blood's full. I'm cool. Let's go fight the elder. And it's like, like, no, you're a fucking vampire. It's not just fill up the taskbar. Like, come on. To me, it's the difference between playing a video game and playing a tabletop role-playing game. And if I wanted to play a video game, I could just go do that. I could just go fill up my mana and my health and then go grind and level up. I do want to do that, but just not on the tabletop, right? I want to go play a game that uses my imagination. And I think that this does it better than, V20 or the previous versions. So my opinion has been stated. Anyways.
It's valid. I'm sorry. I was doing what the audience tends to do. I was watching your opinion going, yeah, I agree with them. Yeah, that's right. That's good. What else is Nate's opinion?
Well, my opinion is that's the end of the podcast because we have another one to do. And so anyways, until next week, thank you guys for listening. We hope we've been informative and entertaining. I am Nathan.
Yes. You need to say that again.
I am Nathan.
And I am Bob.
And we will talk to you again soon. Hey folks, this is Nathan from utilitymuffinlabs.com. If you enjoyed the Nerdwords podcast, think about supporting us. For more podcasts, art, videos, and gaming, go to utilitymuffinlabs.com. Follow our podcast on Twitter at UtilityMuffins, on Instagram and Facebook under our Utility Muffin Labs name, and support us on YouTube at Utility Muffin Labs. Check out our other gaming-related podcasts, 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade, and check out our Playing Hooky podcast coming soon. Thank you all for your support. Utility Muffin Labs, consistently rated adequate.